Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your time together at your Day of Advocacy conference, where you're learning or being reminded about using and embracing your own voice. My name is Erin Oban. For those of you who aren't able to see me, I'm just a bit over 5 feet tall. I have blonde, if I'm being honest, I'm going a little gray, hair to about my shoulders, and I'm wearing a black jacket and a striped shirt while I stand in my office where I serve as North Dakota's state director for a federal agency called USDA Rural Development. Everything we do as an agency is about building up and partnering with small and remote rural communities across the country, and I get to do that right here in North Dakota. It is really amazing work, and I feel so lucky to do it each day. I have long believed in the power of one voice, of one person finding the courage to speak up to make change, and how much that change can often help others who maybe can't find that courage or aren't able to speak up for themselves. I believed that growing up. I watched it happen many times as a state legislator when I served in the North Dakota Senate. I'm trying to model that and teach that to our 5-year-old son each and every day. And I want to tell you just a brief story, if I could, about a recent experience in my new job at USDA Rural Development that serves as a perfect example of why I continue to believe that. I learned just the other day about one man. His name is Joe. He's a farmer, 81 years old, from a small town in western North Dakota, who was frustrated that he didn't have high-speed internet to his farm. And he decided in 2022 that is not good enough so that he can stay connected to his friends and family across the world. So he reached out to our office, and our office reached out to the internet provider for his area and worked with them to apply for a grant that would help cover and bring down some of the costs that it requires to deliver fiber to get high-speed internet out to really remote places. Because of Joe, that provider recently was awarded a grant of $18 million to make it affordable to actually get him internet. But this isn't just about Joe. What he did in speaking up means now more than 1,000 people, businesses, and schools will now have access to more reliable high-speed internet as well. And if that isn't a reminder of the power that each of us possesses to help create positive change, I don't really know what is. So thank you for spending your time coming together to build one another up, to learn how you can better advocate for yourself and in the process, other people. The world needs more helpers. And I'm so glad that each one of you is working on being a helper. Have a great time, and thanks so much for letting me say hi. Wish I could be with you.
Thank you, Erin Oban, for that welcome video. We appreciate your work. So my name is Eric Stoker, and I'm joining you guys today from Salt Lake City, Utah. I am 6'1". I am wearing a, grayish polo, black pants, and I am also wearing glasses. I serve with a lot of boards that help people with disabilities, but my main job is the information specialist for the Utah Developmental Disabilities Council, and I'm excited to bring greetings from Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm going to share a little bit about my advocacy journey, because this is part of your guys' conference, the Day of Advocacy. So my advocacy journey for me began when I was a 9th grader at my local middle school, and I was on a bus route going all the way out to the outskirts of my home state of Utah and back to my hometown. And I couldn't take it. I was like, this is getting me really, really frustrated. And I told my mom, I asked my mom, can you tell me to do this? And she had to tell me, she said, if I wanted to get this done, I would have to advocate for myself. And I was like, okay. So she role played with me, and after a while, I had to talk to the special ed coordinator, and then he explained to me, he said, well, we'll see what we can do. And I got my wish finally the next day. So that's part of my advocacy journey a little bit. So a few housekeeping items to review with you guys today. So we are virtual today, so hello to all those who are joining us online today. There is a map of our activities and a full agenda in your program. The restrooms are right outside of this room, and they are accessible. There are restrooms upstairs where we will also be spending our time during breakouts, but these are not accessible. There's a refreshing station near the restrooms downstairs, and we need you. We are filming quick interviews asking you one or two things. Either talk about your voting experience, positive or negative, or telling us why you advocate. Stop at the registration to sign up. You'll see some examples of the interviews in the rolling PowerPoint today. So stop by the registration desk or wave down Deirdre or Julie if you have any additional questions. So I'd like to introduce you to my fellow MC of the day, JC Ingards. JC is not only my co-host on stage all day, she will also be on the panel at lunch where you'll get to learn so much more about JC. But before that, I'd like to share a little bit more about her. JC is a great advocate for herself, but her passion really is for advocating for others who can't advocate for themselves. One of her favorite quotes is by Rosemary Crossley. "Not being able to speak is not the same as not having anything to say." When she heard at a friend's graduation speech once, it has stuck with her ever since. JC believes not only do we need to teach and encourage others to advocate for themselves and others, but we also need to learn how to better serve our communities. JC serves on YES, IDEA, and the North Dakota State Rehabilitation Council advisory boards. JC?
As you said, my name is JC. Before I pass the stage over to our keynote, Russell, I'd like to personally welcome you to our event. I'm JC. I have cerebral palsy. I sit in a chair. I'm wearing a black polo shirt with khaki pants. But before I go any further, I would like to, Deidre, would you stand up, please? Without Deidre, this event wouldn't happen. I am very thankful for you. And I would like to also thank our many board members. You know who you are. Will you please stand up? The day is jam-packed, so I won't keep you much longer. Did you know both event hosts have advocacy boards where you're seeking members for the all and yes boards? Come see me or Julie for more information. Eric, thank you for being here. A little bit about Eric. He has spoke nationwide about issues that affect people with disabilities, autism, and his life experiences. He received the Champion of Equal Opportunities Award from the National Association for Councils with Developmental Disabilities in 2014. In Eric's free time, his hobbies include attending baseball games, football games, and football games with his family. And a fun fact about Eric is that he is an avid train buff and has amazing knowledge about the past and current railroad system throughout the United States. Eric is full of knowledge. We welcome him to share it with you today, so grab him if you have a chance. Thank you to the Event Center staff, our production crew, Shannon and her team, Julie, and all of the planning members for building such a great conference. We may or may not have time for Q&A with Russell or when Russell is done, but I welcome you to stay after our conference for the social event. It starts at 4:30, where Russell will be hanging out and available for questions. Don't leave early. At the end of the day, we will collect your name badges and surveys for a chance to win prizes. Russell's bio is available in the program, so I won't be reading that to you today. Mostly, I am most excited to welcome Russell back to North Dakota and hear him speak to us in person. If you don't get enough of him this morning, you can head to his breakout later today.
Thank you both for the introduction. I appreciate it. Just trying to figure out how the slides work here. Are they supposed to show up in the front? The screens here are black. Just. All right. My name is Russell Lehman. I'm a motivational speaker and spoken word poet and an advocate. You can use your QR scanner to scan the QR code there. My social media is underneath. The website is on top. I'm not doing well today. I've past 2 weeks have been really tough for me, up and down. Today especially, it's difficult to say the least. I just stopped crying about 45 seconds ago, and honestly, I wasn't going to do this. Not because I didn't want to, but because I felt like I couldn't. And there's a big difference between knowing and feeling. Because I still feel like I can't do this, but I know I can. And before I get into my presentation, what you know and what you feel will most likely, at moments of stress, contradict one another. We're emotional creatures, but we really can't have emotions dictate our actions. And whether those emotions stem from my personal experiences, such as OCD, traumatic events of the past, a stressful week with a lot of triggers involved, depression, a lack of sleep, whatever your emotions stem from, you can let them dictate your actions, but it's not going to chart the path to what's possible. We want to keep our emotions in check, acknowledge them, accept them, feel them, become friends with them. But we want what we know to be true about ourselves to chart the path to what is possible. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in my keynote right now. I've come a long way. Come a heck of a long way in life. A little bit of background of the work I do now is, I travel all over, and traveling is very difficult for me. I travel all over, not only just sharing my lived experience, but using my hindsight to generate foresight for others. Spreading the lessons I've learned and realizing that the polarities of life, actually, when they're combined, they do open a path forward. And so for me, through all the suffering I've been through all the struggle I've been through, that's actually how I found my success. It was not by running away from my struggles, because whenever I would run away from my struggles, they would catch up with me, tackle me from behind. But it was when I turned around and stared back at my struggles that I realized that the success lies within the struggle. So like I said, I've come a long way. I've come a long way. I was diagnosed with autism at age 12. But just to give you kind of a glimpse of how far I've come on face value, the picture on your left there is how I really was every single day of my life and still am. Basically, that's how I was 10 minutes ago before coming up here. I was hiding behind that curtain back there when the prior speakers were welcoming you to the conference. I was hiding behind that curtain, and I was very much that scared little boy. That scared little boy still is within me today. But sometimes I feel like I forgot about him. Sometimes I am doing so well and am so quote-unquote successful that I feel like I left that young little kid who was struggling all the time back in the past, and I forgot about him. I feel like I've lived multiple lives just because of the dramatic growth I encounter almost every year. But how did I get here? How did I get here? 2 words: passion and purpose. Passion and purpose. Passion, the Latin root word of passion is pati, which means to suffer. So passion literally means suffering. And it is my firm belief that through suffering and through pain, you actually come upon your passions as a type of outlet for your pain. My first passion was poetry. In my early 20s, I was in a lot of pain, and I hadn't had any friends in over a decade, very isolated, and poetry became that best friend I had always yearned for. And it therefore became a passion because I was able to turn my suffering not only into a poem, but into a work of art. And to be able to turn suffering into something I was actually proud of was very cathartic. And it gave me insight into, yes, indeed, the success does lie within the struggle. My passion led me to my purpose. Now, your purpose is what you hold on to during those tough times. My purpose is what I'm trying to hold on to right now, even though it kind of feels like a butterfly just out of my grasp. You know, I'm grasping for it, but it's just out of reach. It's still there, though. I still know I have a purpose. Even if I can't fully feel it right now, I know it, right? Feeling and knowing. I used to go unheard for the vast majority of my life. But then I learned through my passion not only how to use my voice, but how to have my voice be heard. And how to have people listen to me instead of just hearing me and not sincerely listening. But passion and purpose are 2 words that will always be instrumental in my personal growth. And in anyone's personal growth. The German philosopher Nietzsche, he said, "He who has a why can bear almost any how." We might not ever find out what our purpose is, but that doesn't mean we don't have one. Everybody has a purpose. Everybody has passions. It's just all about learning how to discover them. And sometimes you won't discover all of them, and that's okay too. A little bit of background of my life's journey is age 7. Lived a typical, quote-unquote, typical childhood up until about the age of 7, but at age 7 really began experiencing vicious meltdowns, panic attacks, depression, severe phobias. Attending school started to become increasingly difficult, and I developed a severe speech impediment due to sucking my thumb. I sucked my thumb until the age of 15. And to kind of, again, give you a juxtaposition of how far I've come, you know, being a public speaker would be the last thing I would ever have thought I'd become, just because at age 15, I had such a severe speech impediment that even if I was feeling okay enough to talk to somebody, they wouldn't be able to understand me. I used to not like talking to anybody, you know, but again, now I'm a public speaker. So it's kind of funny and ironic how life unfolds. Life continuously contradicts itself. You know, those full circle moments where you kind of end up either back where you were or the opposite of where you used to be. Age 9 though, age 9. Again, I wasn't diagnosed with autism until age 12, so understand that all these struggles from age 7 to 12 for 5 years, my family and I didn't know what was going on. We were just looking for answers. We were living in Seattle. I was, you know, taking to all the best doctors, neurologists, like all the tests done, and nobody for some reason could come up with any kind of diagnosis other than just he's a kid who's struggling. Age 9, continued to experience these meltdowns, panic attacks, severe phobias. Now, my phobias were so severe to the extent that I would not be able to leave my house. Oftentimes, I wouldn't be able to even leave my bedroom. I had severe phobias of open spaces, of any kind of bugs, or even really any animal. I mean, I remember we had a family dog, and I as much as I love dogs, it was so overwhelming to have that dog come up to me that I oftentimes had to stay in my bedroom when, my whole family was downstairs with the family dog. Even though I wanted to be there, I was unable to be there. My phobias were so severe that, germs, I would wash my hands 100, 200, 300 times a day. They would crack open and bleed every night when I would go to bed. It's kind of funny looking back that tears would be coming from my eyes and blood would be coming from my hands almost every night when I would go to bed. And looking back in hindsight, I'm like, damn, how did I live like that every day? Because prior to me coming up on this stage, again, I felt like that little 9-year-old Russell. And I was thinking when I was hiding behind that curtain, because I'm 31 now, I was thinking when I was hiding behind that curtain, feeling everything I used to feel every single day, I'm like, that 9-year-old kid, he's a tough kid, and I didn't leave him behind. He's actually still here and here. And that's ultimately what made me come up on the stage, is if that 9-year-old kid could get through it, then I sure as hell can. But at age 9, OCD really started to control my life at this point. It began to consume my livelihood, along with the very disturbing, intrusive thoughts. A lot of people don't know that when it comes to OCD, a lot of the rituals, compulsions, obsessions stem from an intrusive thought. And for me, those, for instance, washing my hands, right? That was a phobia and an OCD ritual. And I wasn't washing my hands necessarily because I was afraid of germs per se, but my intrusive thought was that, Russell, if you don't wash your hands, there's going to be a repercussion, and this is what's going to happen. And those repercussions could be as irrational as your mom will catch cancer and die right in front of you if you don't wash your hands, Russell. And here I am at age 9, knowing that, I knew it was irrational. Again, knowing and feeling, I knew it was irrational to wash my hands in order to prevent my mom immediately catching cancer, but it felt so rational. And that's what we need to understand, is especially when you're supporting somebody who has maybe irrational thoughts, if you say something like, I used to be told by my mom, with the best intentions, sweetie, that's not going to happen. And I knew that. But at the same time, I didn't feel that, right? So it's a lot of invisible disabilities, especially mental health diagnoses. It's all about how you feel. Because feeling and knowing, again, directly contradict each other. So even though I knew it wasn't possible, I felt like it was possible. And we're emotional creatures, which drove me to ease those feelings. Those feelings would only dissipate if I performed the ritual my OCD told me to via intrusive thoughts. And I started to become more and more reclusive due to my struggles and my severe speech impediment. I couldn't pronounce my S's. And unfortunately, my name has 2 S's in it, Russell, right in the middle. So even on those days where, I would maybe have the courage to answer the landline at home, our phone, I would never even I would say hello, but I couldn't say my name because nobody would be able to understand me. So this all just continually, drip by drip by drip, led me to withdraw inward. And I thus became very isolated. At age 12, I was hospitalized for 5 weeks due to severe depression, anxiety, and OCD. This was in Seattle. It was a lockdown psychiatric ward. And I gotta say, when I look back at those 5 weeks, I feel like it's a movie. I think about what occurred there, and I have detached myself from it. Probably because it's still 20 years later too painful to dive into. But I spent 5 weeks there. Ultimately left after 5 weeks without any diagnosis. They basically said, we don't know what's going on with you, kid. You seem to be struggling, but we can't help you. And you've been here quite a while. This is a busy hospital, and we need your bed for a new patient. Obviously, they didn't say that to my face, but that's what eventually happened. I left that hospital without any supports in place, no accommodations. I didn't even have an IEP yet because I didn't have a diagnosis of autism yet. And a year prior to my stay at this psychiatric ward at age 11, I had to drop out of public school in the 5th grade due to severe anxiety, severe phobias, severe OCD, severe depression, severe separation anxiety from my mom, not to mention the autism that had yet to be diagnosed. But when I dropped out of 5th grade, I still remember to this day, it's like a freaking movie in my head. It's so hard to believe this was my life, that I remember standing in front of that school trying to get into class that one day in 5th grade. My mom was right near me, and I wanted to go. I knew I had to go, but I felt like I couldn't go. And at such a young age, I didn't know what to do, and I didn't have control of my emotions back then. I still don't today. But I remember I ultimately tried my best to get into that classroom, but I couldn't. And my mom drove me home, and that was the last day I ever went to public school. Age 11. And it wasn't until last year, at age 30, almost 20 years later, that I was able to say I have a friend. So that last day of 5th grade, when I couldn't make it in that classroom, was basically the end of my life at that point in time. And then it was almost like I came into a rebirth last year, which I will touch on in a few minutes. I was basically non-functional. I was that kid in the corner of the room with his hood on, sucking his thumb, rocking back and forth, not making eye contact, not talking to anybody, just totally shut down, like a computer was just pulled. The plug from the computer was just pulled out of the wall. After I was released from the psychiatric ward at age 12, I was ordered to attend public school without receiving any support or accommodations. Now, I say 5th grade was the last day of public school, even though I was ordered to attend public school at age 12 a year later, but I don't consider that really attending public school, because what happened was I spent the school day sleeping in the principal's office simply because they didn't know what to do with that weird kid. That weird kid who was totally shut down, who wouldn't make eye contact to any teachers that talked to him, who wore his hood when you're not supposed to wear your hood indoors. They didn't know what to do with that kid. And again, not having a formal diagnosis of any type yet, no diagnosis of autism, there was no IEP in place, there were no accommodations. And so they were just basically, the school decided to just put me in the principal's office, which, hey, if I had to go to school at all, at least it was going to be in a place, in a principal's office, where I was alone and by myself. Again, not the best place for any kid to be, but if I was going to be physically forced to go to this school, I would have rather had it been in the principal's office rather than a classroom surrounded by kids who would then obviously bully me, ask me questions about why I don't talk and why when I do talk, they can't tell what I'm saying, et cetera, et cetera. So I stayed in that principal's office for a few months, and I was heavily sedated at the time. The doctors, since they couldn't find out a diagnosis for me, they put me on a lot of sedatives, so I was sleeping about 16, 17 hours a day, and I would fall asleep in the principal's office. There would be a pile of work in front of me to do because the teachers would just drop it off in front of me. But half the time I'd be sleeping with my head on the table in the principal's office. And these teachers would just see this random kid in the principal's office. You see a kid in the principal's office, you're going to think he's in trouble, right? So these teachers saw me in the principal's office. They'd shake me to wake me up, ask me what I did wrong, why I didn't want to be part of the school environment, why I was lazy, why I didn't want to be there. And I didn't say anything back, obviously. I had a voice, but I did not use my voice. And even if I were to use my voice, it wasn't going to be heard. A, because of my speech impediment, and B, because I was dismissed as that lazy, eccentric kid who just didn't want to be there in the first place. But I was thinking to myself, whenever they would question my desire to be in school, I would think to myself, I desperately want to be part of the school environment. I just need, I don't know what I need, but I need some kind of help. But nobody really ever asked me. Julie, just a few minutes ago, Julie. She asked me, how can I help? And those are my 4 magic words to this day, because in my childhood, nobody asked me those questions. They would just see a kid crying and, see me at my behavior at face value without asking or inquiring as to why I might be feeling that way. Long story short, a few months of just my mom dropping me off at this public school, going to the principal's office, sleeping on the table in the principal's office, getting picked up by my mom. A few months of that, until finally later that year, I was diagnosed with autism at the University of Washington's Autism Center. Now, I welcome the diagnosis. I mean, it really didn't change anything other than the fact that it did, give me some accommodations. But I welcome the diagnosis because now I finally felt like I knew what was going on, I knew that maybe, this is the reason I am suffering so much at such a young age. This is the reason why my mind is so intricate that it seems like there's a million things going on in my mind at once and they all contradict one another, which usually leads to meltdowns because there's just so much information in here that it's just complete system overload. So it gave me some kind of closure, my diagnosis. It gave me some kind of closure. But in reality, in hindsight, this was 2003. Almost 20 years ago. And autism was not nearly as well known as it is today back then. So now I wasn't just that weird kid in the corner of the room with his hood on, not talking, not making eye contact and sucking his thumb. Now I was that weird autistic kid. And back then, that word confused people. It still does to this day if they don't know too much about it. So it almost made my life a little bit more complicated in some areas, while it did help in other areas. So diagnosis, while I welcomed it, still to this day, it's a societal burden because people don't see my autism, Julie and Deidre saw it a few minutes ago. But usually when I give a speech, this has probably been one of the most difficult times I've had trying to give a speech in my entire life. So usually when I'm out and about and functioning quite well, obviously people can't see my autism, right? So they always question when they hear I have autism. You sure you have autism? Oh, you don't look autistic. Oh, you must be doing very well then. All these kind of very little degradations, right? Up to who I am as an individual. So autism has always been a double-edged sword. Fast forward to age 18. After I got my diagnosis of autism, I stopped going to that public school and I just took classes online and got my GED. So just kind of for the next 5 years, stayed home, took my classes online. But at age 18, I was somehow able to play varsity football at my local high school. And that was a very unique experience because I literally played 2 years of varsity football, surrounded by 60 other guys and 20 adult men. And not once did I have a single conversation with anybody. Some of my teammates would ask me, or would just say hi, or am I having a good day? And I would say yes or no, or hi. I would reply with one-word responses. But this was age 18. This was just, 13 years ago. And I still, even though I was somewhat in society, I was not of society. I was in the community, but not of the community. Because I very much stuck out like a sore thumb. But I was able to play those 2 years of high school football, and that was my first time I had been around my peers since age 11. And while it was very difficult, it was extremely difficult, it was something I wanted to do. And I guess I found there to be a purpose behind that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. Because in hindsight, if I had to do it again, I wouldn't. Let's just put it that way. At the same time, I always knew what I had within me. I always knew there was something in me that I could give back to this world. And so at age 18, I'm going back and forth between trying to figure out how can I give whatever I have in here to the world. Let me try to get my feet wet in society by playing football. Let me try to, see if I can take community college classes online. I was trying to find some kind of voice. Because again, like a voice doesn't have to be a voice. A voice can be anything. It's an expression. It's how you express yourself. So when we talk about like embracing your voice and all that, it doesn't necessarily have to literally be a voice. Art is a perfect example. My poetry is an expression, right? So I was trying to find this expression, this outlet for my expression on how to, again, tap into my inner potential to give the world what I have to offer, but I just couldn't find it. It was just still too difficult. And at this point, age 18, again, I really never received any supports other than about a year after my diagnosis of autism, age 12. Within about a year, I gained some supports and accommodations. But once I went back to taking online classes, really no accommodations at all. No supports about college, no supports on transition to adulthood, nothing. I was really just left to my own devices. So age 21, it's been 3 years now since I stopped taking online classes. I've always enjoyed learning and educating myself, however, because I firmly believe that knowledge is one thing we can give to ourselves that no one can ever take away. So I've always just prided myself on learning as much as I could. But now, age 21, I'm 3 years after getting my GED online, 3 years after playing varsity football, sunk into a severe depression. Because now the social media is becoming more popular at this point in time. I have an older sister, and she would talk about, she's 5 years older, so at age 21, she was 26, and she was going to college. She was having friends over to my mom and dad's house where I was still living. Like, I saw what a typical, quote-unquote, typical life was like, and I didn't have a single part of it, anything. Again, the last friend I hung out with was at age 11. It had been 10 years now since I hung out with a friend. I didn't know what it was like to go out on weekends. My weekends consisted of crying on my bedroom floor because of loneliness. I didn't know what it was like to date. For the last 10 years, I was completely shut off from society. Now, I played varsity football, but that was almost more difficult in a sense because, again, I was part of it, but I felt invisible, right? Some people would say hi, and I've greatly appreciated that in those individuals. But nobody knew how to interact with me, and I, in turn, didn't know how to interact with them. So it was almost like I was invisible in society, and so it was almost getting a taste of what could be, but still was very, very far away. So age 21, all this coming to a head, and I'm just like, I'm 21, I'm an adult now, and I'm still living on disability. I'm on disability payments. I've never had a job before. My last friend was 10 years ago. I haven't ever dated. I'm not going to college. I'm living with my parents. And so I sunk into a severe depression. My OCD at that time morphed into anorexia. OCD is my most fervent nemesis in my life. It is very adaptable. It is intertwined its way through the foundation of my entire existence. I cannot get away from it. Every aspect of my life is built around my OCD. The rigidity of OCD combined with the rigidity of autism has made my functioning mechanisms akin to a Jenga tower. I feel like my functioning mechanisms are this Jenga tower. You just pull one block out and the whole thing can come crashing down. And that's what happened about 30 minutes ago before I came up here. There's just 1 or 2 blocks were removed in the past days and everything just came crashing down. And I had a meltdown. But OCD morphed into anorexia because here's how it morphed. It's like whack-a-mole. I say OCD is like whack-a-mole. You think you have it cornered, you think you have it in control here, and it pops up in another area of my life. And so at this point, I had severe depression, so I couldn't work out in my room anymore. So not working out in my room anymore, my OCD, again, intrusive thoughts said, Russell, since you can't work out because you're too depressed, well, you're going to gain 300 pounds. Again, I knew that was irrational, but it felt completely real. So what did my OCD tell me to do to counteract that intrusive thought of gaining weight? Starve yourself, Russell. Starve yourself, the problem solved, right? You won't gain any weight. So I did. And there's something very cathartic about starving yourself. Food is, when you struggle with your mental health, food is can be one of the most toxic things in life in terms of something to control. Because obviously when our lives are out of control, we try to hold on to something that we can control because we want a sense of control. But very little, a minimal amount of our lives we can actually control. And that's what was happening here is I felt like my whole life was coming crashing down without ever even having begun. And so I was trying to have a sense of control and relief by limiting the amount of food I would eat. And this then just in turn exacerbated my depression. Long story short, for 56 straight days, I didn't leave my house, shower, even change clothes. For 56 days. And I know it was 56 days because my OCD was keeping track of each day. And that's kind of funny, right? It's like, here I am counting the days I've been miserable, but that's what OCD is. It doesn't make sense. It's just counting feels good in that regard. But that's when I began writing poetry. I had so much pain, so much bitterness towards the outside world because whether it's via my sister or seeing things on Facebook or the news or media, TV shows, again, quote unquote, typical, normal childhood, adolescence, or young adult years look like, I became very bitter towards the outside world not because I didn't like them, but because I envied the outside world so much and I couldn't have it. It's been 10 years now that I haven't been able to have it, and I envied them, and so I became bitter towards the outside world. I had all these emotions in me. So I started writing poetry. And that was the first time I was able to express myself and feel good about it. Again, to be able to turn my suffering into a piece of art. And not only that, help people with it. Because at age 21, I self-published a book of poetry. Now, I self-published that book not because I was trying to, embrace my voice or to advocate or to help others. I just felt like the world had completely forgotten about me. I wanted my poems out there to say, hey world, don't forget about me, because it's not just me. There are millions of kids like this in America and all around the world that we need to pay more attention to. So I just kind of self-published this book just to, have some validation as to please see how much I'm struggling with no help. But instead, I remember the first messages I would get about this book and how much people could relate to my story, and that was unexpected. Because I truly did not know how many people would be able to relate to this, because again, I was isolated for so long, I did not know how many people, I did not know a lot about society, right? Just because of my isolation. So to publish this book and hopes people would maybe remember me or not forget about me, but in turn have people thank me for putting this out there because it helped them, that was my first unintentional taste of advocacy. And that's when I found my purpose. My passion was poetry, my purpose, advocacy. And poetry is when I found my voice. Poetry is when I first became proud of my voice. Poetry is when I learned how to have my voice be heard. And poetry is really how I became empowered through my voice and embraced my voice. Age 25, 4 years later, still living with parents, still on disability benefits, still no job, still no friends or connection to the outside world. So now it's been 14 years since that last time I attended public school when I couldn't make it into my 5th grade class. It's been 14 years now, I'm 25. The book momentum has kind of died out, and I'm thinking to myself, it was one of those weekends, because the weekends were especially tough, because I knew, there was prom, and there was this and that, and all these things going on, the social life, that's when social activities come to life as a young adult, on the weekends. So weekends were always especially tough for me, because I knew what I was missing out on. But I remember one of these weekends, I was age 25, thinking about how much that book had impacted others. And at this point, I had nothing to lose, right? Here I am, 25. I literally have nothing to risk. Why not, shoot for the stars and maybe try public speaking? Maybe even write another book. I started to cultivate that isolation and that suffering into strategies to move forward and to chart that path to what is possible, because I knew there was something there. I knew that book of poetry came from the most inner depths of who I am as an individual through my suffering. And when I spoke about that helped others feel less alone, understand more about the complexities of the autistic mind, combined with mental health diagnoses on top of that, and trauma from external experiences with society. I knew there was something to give in there. And so on this weekend, instead of crying on my bedroom floor, I did still cry on my bedroom floor, but it ended in happy tears, because I came to realize that these actual tears that I'm crying now might just be the impetus for the path forward. Right? So at age 25, I was like, if I'm ever going to live the life I want to live, I have to start living it right now. Because this is the only moment we will ever have, right? Right now, right here. And so I decided, why not? Take it a step further and try public speaking. Long story short, I somehow was able to cold call a bunch of people in the autism community, in my local autism community, via email. Wasn't brave enough to cold call them via phone, no way. I would email them, introduce myself, say this has been my story thus far, and if you can just, if you have a family support group or this and that where I can share 5 minutes of my story, I would very much appreciate it. And, that happened one day, and it just kind of, things started clicking along. And ultimately, it turned into my full-time career. This is really the only job I've ever had. Really the only job I've ever had. And I've been speaking professionally full-time for about 3 years now. And last year, at age 30, I moved to Los Angeles. Before that, I was living in Nevada with my mom. My mom, I had spent 30 years attached to her hip. When COVID hit, though, in 2020, and my travels stopped for speaking, I was back in Nevada, and I realized, wow, the only person I really ever interact with is my mom. I still don't have those friends. I still don't have a relationship. I am not part of society. I just am in my little bubble in my mom's house. I fly, and I give a speech, and I come right back to that little bubble. But once COVID hit and I couldn't get out of that bubble through my speeches, I was stuck in that bubble, and I realized I'm basically back to where I was at age 11 when I couldn't get into that 5th grade classroom. And I knew deep down that I have a lot more growing to do. And I knew Reno, Nevada was not the best place for me professionally or personally. So last year, I did move to LA. I picked LA because my sister's in San Diego, and LA has a lot of career opportunities, not to mention beautiful weather. But I didn't know a single person. And when I moved to LA, it was the first time I was in my entire life that I was fully independent. Very first time. And I'm still in LA. And it's been about 13 months now. I've been in LA, fully independent. And it's been extremely difficult. It's maybe the most difficult year of my life, but it's also been the most fulfilling year of my life. There's a lot of growing pains, which is why I moved to LA. I wanted to grow. Growing is uncomfortable. Let's face it, growing hurts, right? That's why they say, if you stay in your comfort zone, nothing magical ever happens there because it's comfortable. Discomfort is the impetus behind personal growth and development. So it's been about 13 months of discomfort, but the amount of growth I've had has just been tremendous. Again, for the first time in my life since age 11, now, 20 years later, I can say I have friends. I can say I'm in a relationship. I can say I even have a side job at a yoga studio in LA. I have all these things that have just transpired just in the past 13 months simply because I followed my heart. And your voice, if you can really tap into your voice, one way to really have your voice be heard is if you speak from the heart, right? That is probably the most effective way to use your voice. And again, it doesn't have to be your voice. It can be writing, it can be drawing, it can be any kind of expression, outlet of expression. Bless you. But everything in my life now, let me just say this, because I want to leave some time for Q&A, and we have about 20 minutes. I am 31, and no matter how much I still struggle with my OCD and with all the symptoms I've talked about, I still obviously have them all and struggle with all of them to this day. This is the first time in my life I can say I enjoy my life. And that's worth it all. It's worth it all, Because I can find more success through these struggles. I can learn how to handle these struggles more and more. But I've always yearned for fulfillment and contentment, and I have that now. And it's because I took that risk and followed my bliss. So I showed you the picture on the left and the right earlier. The one in the middle is when I was 21 and I was having that bout of anorexia. But if you take your risk and you follow your bliss, great things will happen. I'm a big fan of Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell was an American mythologist, intellectual. He always said, follow your bliss and doors will open where there once only stood walls. Everybody in this room knows what they want. But again, knowing and feeling are two different things. I know I want this, but I feel like I can't do this. I know I want that, but I feel like it's too big a risk right now. I know I'm capable of this, but I feel the judgment if I try to do it. Everybody here knows what they want. And we only have one life. And at age 25, I came to realize that. I had nothing to lose. And if I don't start living my life right now, I'm never going to live my life. And even though my disabilities have had me for the majority of my life, I now have them. I now manipulate them. I manipulate my OCD to become extremely ambitious and tenacious and formidable in the face of my struggles. My depression breeds deep empathy for others because I know what it's like to suffer alone and feel like you're the only one in the world going through this. I manipulate my disabilities now. They serve me. I have them. They no longer have me. And I have become this empowered because I followed my heart and I used my voice. Now, it's not an easy thing to do by any means. It's not an easy thing to do by any means. But what I can tell you is in order to become successful in life, and let's all just take a minute to realize success is relative to everybody. Like, no one has the same definition of what success is. So whatever you deem success to be, if you want that in your life, You don't go chasing success. You follow your passions and success will follow you. Success is a byproduct of following your passions. I always think of this interview I saw a few months ago with George Clooney. George Clooney didn't become famous until his mid-30s. And he was talking about how thankful he was for that. Because if he had become a movie star in his 20s or his early 30s, he wouldn't have been able to handle it, and it would have all gone up in flames. But the fact that he just stuck to it because he was passionate about acting, and success just happened to appear to that standard of where he is now in his mid-30s, all the failure leading up to that success prepared him to handle that success. And so there really is no such thing as failure. If you follow your passions, how could you fail? If you're doing what you love, how can you fail? Again, you might feel like you're failing, but don't let that trick you into knowing you're a failure, because no one is a failure. I say the only true failure lies in not trying. Another reason I tried my best to get up here on the stage today instead of going back to the hotel. So even though we may all feel like a failure at times, know that you aren't. And follow your passions, and success will follow you. Because if you just chase success, if you go after that job because of the money or the social status, or you get into a relationship for social validation, or you buy that new car just to stand out and get a little bit more recognition and appreciation from people, it's going to be very hollow, and it's going to die out. But the fire that lies within your passion always burns. Just before getting on this stage, as much as I was struggling and wanting to go home and wanting to just say F it all and I can't do this anymore because it's just too tough, I could still feel that little kindling of fire deep down, that passion. And that's what my voice is, and that's what your voice is. That thing you're passionate about, that thing you're here for, your purpose. Speak up in whatever way you want to speak, whether, again, that's your voice or drawing or writing, any kind of expression. Expressing your passion equals success. It does. But again, if we fall into society's definition of success, then we're going to be led astray, because again, success is relative to each and every individual, and if you look at success from a societal standpoint, just don't. Because again, that's when we start comparing ourselves to others. They're more successful than me, they have a better car, they have more friends, they're more popular, they're better looking. These are all some kind of weird, abstract concepts of success. But is that what success is for you? I don't think so. That's society's image of success. It's just an image. There's no substance behind it. And I fall into that trap too. We're all human. When I'm up here talking about all these things, don't think like I have this all down. No, I'm learning. I'm just in the beginning stages of learning all this. And this is often how I feel. Especially with social media so rampant in this day and age. I feel like I'm that guy in the back just falling on his face when everybody else is just easily running. I mean, look at that woman. She's running in high heels, and I can't even run in regular shoes. I compare myself. We all compare ourselves. But what happens when we don't? What happens when we don't? When we compare ourselves, we focus on others, right? If I'm on Instagram and I'm seeing another speaker who just got this huge gig in London, and I'm like, man, I'm happy for him, but at the same time, I want that. I'm not focused on myself. I'm distracted from myself. I'm distracted from my own journey, and I'm distracted from the current success that is right in front of my eyes at this very moment. So if I keep looking at these people who I feel are ahead of me in the so-called rat race, if I keep looking at them and focusing on them, of course I'm going to fall on my face, because I'm not focusing on me. I'm not paying attention to where I am in the race. There actually isn't even a race, right? But too often we feel that peer pressure and social pressure that there is indeed a race, but if I can just focus on myself instead of the people in front of me or that I feel are in front of me, what am I going to do here? If I'm just here focused on myself, I'm just going to pick myself up and realize that although I fell on my face, at least I fell forward. You're still moving forward, even when you fall on your face. You are making progress. I'm going to skip through some slides because I'm doing a lot of this speech just off the cuff just because of the difficult morning it's been. But I do want to talk quickly about baby steps. Baby steps have been the theme of my life's accomplishments, both figuratively and literally. 2 weeks ago, I posted on Instagram a picture of my foot because I couldn't leave my house. It had been like 72 hours, and I could not leave my house. I had been trying for 72 hours to leave the house, and I couldn't. And then after 72 hours, that little kindling of passion kind of just burned a little bit brighter, and I was like, maybe this is the time I can not even go out, but maybe even open the window, or at least open the front door. I was able to open the front door and put my foot out. And not only my foot, I was able to look out, like stick my head outside the door frame. And I had my phone in my hand, so I took a picture of my foot. And I went back in, and I didn't go out for another 24 hours. But that was a huge success for me. I felt proud of myself because with autism, I can excel at the extraordinary. You know, I've given speeches in over 3 countries. I've done some just incredible things that a lot of people are in awe of, but with autism, I may excel at the extraordinary, but I really struggle with the simple. I really have a difficult time with the simple things. And so when I took that foot, when I stepped my foot outside that front door, that was more fulfilling and empowering than any professional accolade I've ever had. And the great thing about baby steps is Confucius once said, it does not matter how slowly you go as long as you do not stop. When we take baby steps, you know, so like I'm a big dreamer. I have a lot of big goals, right? But if you have a big goal, if you go shooting for that goal, you're most likely, there's a 50-50 chance you may or may not achieve that goal. But if you can take your big goal and break it down into baby steps, small incremental steps, your chance of failure, quote-unquote failure, decreases, and the smaller the step, your chance of success increases, right? If I'm going to try to step from here all the way over to the stairs there, I'm going to fail. But if I can baby step, I'm going to make it. It's going to take a little bit longer, but I know for sure that I will make it. And that's why baby steps are so beautiful for me, because whether it's professionally or personally or literally, when I take those baby steps and I look over my shoulder after a week, after a month, after a year, after 31 years, and see how far those baby steps have taken me, it's a very humbling, sobering realization that the journey does make sense, that this path that you are on right now is the path forward, because there is no other path, right? Baby steps to big dreams. I really want to emphasize that. I'm going to have about 5 minutes for questions, so I'm going to kind of skip ahead of these. I just want to talk about water really quickly. Like I said, I've really prided myself on just giving myself all the knowledge I can accumulate, because I've had so many things taken away from me that I feel like if I can give myself knowledge, that's mine. That's mine forever. Nobody can take that away from me. So I love just reading about everything and anything. So Lao Tzu, he was the founder of the ancient Asian religion of Taoism. He once said 2,500 years ago that in the world there is nothing more submissive and weak than water, yet for attacking that which is hard and strong, nothing can surpass it. You know, I can throw this water across the stage. But at the same time, water can erode rock. Water can destroy cities. It is the weakest thing and the strongest thing. So when you feel weak, Realize that it is the days on which you feel weak that you are actually having to fight your strongest. Just before coming on this stage, I felt extremely weak. I wanted to go home. I was supposed to go to another state after this. I wanted to cancel that, cancel this, and just go home. I felt weak. But it took strength to get through that feeling of weakness, because I know I'm strong, but I felt weak, right? So know you're strong, and you can feel weak, that's fine, but know that you are just like water, and that even though you're weak, you are still capable of amazing things. Move past that. Staying true to myself has been the one saving grace in my life, because no matter how much I'm suffering or no matter how much I'm enjoying life, if I am true to myself, I am in alignment. And I can see things with a little bit more clarity. And since moving to LA, my speaking career has taken off even more than before moving there. I've grown a lot more personally. I mean, just a lot of amazing things are happening. And I owe that to getting through the success and the struggle, right? So I want to encourage you all to run towards your struggles. Instead of turning your back on them, stare back at them. Because they're there for a reason. And they're scary. They're scary as hell. But they can also be your friends. And if you can utilize them and become more familiar, you don't have to become friends with them right away. Hell, I'm not friends with any of my struggles, but I'm trying to be friends with them. If you can become more familiar with them, you'll realize more and more how to adapt, how to become persevering through the most difficult times, and realize that in hindsight, we always do seem to come to kiss the feet of adversity. I think we have, I guess my timer here says 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. So I just want to thank you. I will have my book, my latest book, out at the social meetup later tonight. If anybody is interested, I'll obviously give you a signed copy. And I just want to thank you all for hearing me out today, because hearing me use my voice, I hope in turn gives you the confidence moving forward to utilize your voice in whatever means you deem worthy of yourself. So thank you for being here and for hearing me out, and I'm happy to take questions for the next 3 minutes or more if we have time.
I don't have a question, but I want to say how proud I am of you for standing up there after this morning. Our board, this whole room is very proud of you for overcoming your obstacle, and your speech was absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah.
I just wanted to tell you that I really liked that story, and it was very interesting. This is my first ever All South Advocacy Conference, and my name is Mitchell Niemuller, and I'm from Grand Forks. And I came all the way from Grand Forks to Bismarck, in road construction, obviously, some of it. But this is my first ever All South Advocacy Conference I've attended. I really like helping people stand up for others that can't do it themselves. And I was able to meet that goal of getting me a new bed and a new laptop, computer, through the new bed through the Commons housing program, slumber program, sorry. And I also got a new mattress this year, and I wanted to tell you that I was able to meet the goal of getting a laptop for my take trips, I can use it. Thanks to the team getting me Wi-Fi in my home, not just when I go on trips like this. And you guys, and I want to tell you that it was a very interesting story. Thank you for sharing that story.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys have any other questions? Again, yes, one more there.
My name is Rhonda. I'm from Dickinson, North Dakota. And I just got a question. Have any of the people who bullied you and were cruel because they didn't understand what you were going through with your struggle, have any of them came to you later and said they're sorry or have talked to you because maybe they've got a child that has autism and some of the situations you have?
It's a great question. No, they haven't, basically because, it was quite a while ago and social media didn't exist back then and it was in a different stage. So they haven't is the short answer, but people have said, people I don't know or people I meet at a conference that, just hearing your experiences really gives me some more insight into not only my kid's life, my loved one's life, but my life too. So again, everything, has its opposite. So for being bullied for me, again, if I can help spread the message of how to prevent bullying and how to get through the actual unfortunate punishment of being bullied, how to get through it in the healthiest way possible, then the bullying I've encountered would be worth it. So it's all about, just using my experiences and moving forward to help other people have a less painful life. I mean, pain is inevitable, but there's a lot of unnecessary pain out there. So again, if I can use my hindsight to give others foresight down the road, on this journey, then I feel like everything in my life is worth it. Thank you. All right, thank you guys. I will be at the social meetup at 4:30 if you guys have any more questions, and I will have my books there as well. And I want to thank you again.
Thank you so much, Russell. We really appreciate it.
Good to see you, Brian.
You too. So let's watch this closing welcome video from Nicole Pullman. When the video is done, please head to your breakouts upstairs, and we'll see you back here at 11:30 for lunch and our two panels.
Good morning. My name is Nicole Pullman, and as one of the state senators here in Bismarck, I'm here to welcome you to today's conference. As a legislator, educator, and mother of a child with a disability, I want to thank you for your work in advocating for this community. Whether you are a longtime advocate or you're new to this important work, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all you have done and will continue to do. When our son was diagnosed with autism and an intellectual disability 15 years ago, we didn't know what to expect for his future. This week, we took our baby to college, something we never thought would be possible. And it is undoubtedly a result of the work put in by those of you here today. We are forever grateful. So whether you're here as a seasoned advocate for others, or maybe a newbie learning how to advocate for yourself, just remember how important your efforts have been to the people of North Dakota. What you discover and learn today will affect people with disabilities and their families for generations to come. Not bad for a day's work. So we welcome you, we appreciate you, and we thank you. Have an awesome day.